This will hopefully be a quick guide just walking you through a few of the features of Retro Diffusion. So for starters, we have the text to image option here. This is probably what you'll be using the most. So you have the prompt, and the prompt is basically just, all right, what am I wanting to see? It can take a little bit of trial and error to get things the way you want them, but generally try and keep it simple with not very many commas. The negative here is things that you don't want to see. So if during your generation you're getting specific colors or objects or even just sort of a different theme than you're looking for, you can put that in the negative and it'll try to avoid it. We have width and height. These are locked to multiples of 64. That just comes down to how the generations actually work. You can go as low as 192 and as high as 2048. You may need a higher end GPU to get to this kind of size. Generally, I think about 12 gigabytes is enough to make it an image that large. Steps is just how long are you generating this image. I find that between about 15 and 50 is enough. You do not need to go up to 200 at all, pretty much ever. Scale is how closely it tries to follow the prompt. You might think that cranking this number is a good idea, but typically that just leads to oversaturation and sort of deep fries the image. I like to stick between about 5 and 10. Seed is just the initial seed used for generating the image. So if you use the same seed with the same settings, you'll be able to reproduce the same image. This is helpful if you're just trying to get a specific thing or you're trying to tweak something a little bit. Iterations is how many images it will generate in one go. This can be helpful for saving a little bit of time, or maybe you just have a prompt that you want to test out and you want to see what it looks like over multiple seeds. This is just, like I said, a time-saving measure. We'll just leave that at 1 for now. The post-processing section here, we have palletize. That opens the palletization menu after the image is finished generating. We'll leave that unchecked for now. We'll be opening that manually. Resize. It resizes the image to the canvas. This is only applicable if you're not using the pixel model. If you are using the pixel model, check this box here. It reduces the width and height by 8 times regardless of this setting. So if we have 512 by 512 in the generation width and height, we'll get out a 64 by 64 image. That comes down to how the model generates the pixel art, and it's not really something that you can change. We also have tiling settings here, so we can tile it specifically in the X direction, so it'll repeat across those borders. You can also tile it in just the Y direction, so it'll repeat up and down. Or you can do both. We'll stick with none for now, just for this example. So if I hit OK here, it'll start generating. This will take a different amount of time depending on your specific hardware and whether you're using the optimized mode or the CPU mode. And just let it run. As you can see, we've got our generation here. It's a fantasy landscape with mountains and rivers. So now we can go to the palletize menu, and with this we can actually reduce the number of colors just to make it a bit more accurate to pixel art and how pixel art has different limits. So you can choose it to be adaptive. It'll just select the best colors to match to this image, or you can select a palette directly from a file. You can also restrict it to the current palette of the sprite. This is a slider to control dithering. Lower values means less dithering, with 0 being no dithering at all, and 3 being the most. We also have the option to palletize all of the layers, so this will do everything in this direction, or we can do all frames, and that'll do everything in that direction. We'll stick with 24 colors here, and just let it run. And just like that, we've cleaned up the image a little bit, reduced the number of colors, and now it's a lot easier to either edit or use directly. There is also another feature, image to image. This will be grayed out unless you have a selection. So you need to have an active selection, and you need that layer specifically selected. So we'll just click on that image to image. And I think I want to change this up a little bit. So we've got those rivers and the mountains, but it didn't really stick to avoiding those bright pastel colors. But I like this, the shape of this image and the way it's composed. So we'll just go with dark and gloomy. So if we look down here, you'll see there are some different settings. We have strength. And strength affects how much noise is added to the image while generating. So the more noise you add, the more closely to this new generation it will follow instead of the old generation. Because I want to keep a lot of this, this shape, this form, I'm actually going to go to only about 60 here. There, and now we have this new image, except this time it kept a lot of that form. It's a little bit darker, a little bit gloomier. If that wasn't enough, you can try it again with more strength or less strength or a different prompt or pretty much anything you want. The last thing in this is the ability to create palettes from a prompt. So that's just under the palette menu here, and create palette from prompt. I think we'll stick with a vibrant sunset. That usually gets pretty nice results. You can select the number of colors you want in the palette, all the way down to 2 and all the way up to 64. We'll go with 8 for now. So this will load and run just like the other generative models. It's actually creating an image and then using that image as a palette. And just like that, we have a vibrant sunset color palette. I'd say it did pretty well. I'd like to see a little bit more yellow in it, so what I can actually do is just create another. And there, we have an entirely different palette, still kind of themed around that sunset look. Obviously, there are other styles that you can add, pretty much anything you can think of. I think that pretty much concludes this little demo of Retro Diffusion. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'll leave that information in the description. And enjoy using Retro Diffusion.